EM Weekly starting right now, bringing emergency managers from around the world together to learn, share and collaborate.
Well, welcome to this special episode of EM Weekly, and I'm excited we're going to be bringing in FEMA Administrator Peter Gaynor here. But before we start, I just want to get a little deeper into this. So obviously here in California where I'm at, we just had some wildland fires going through, and we had 2 firefighters that got injured during those during the fire attacks. And just want to let you know that my heart and minds are out there with the firefighters. They're both going through the burn protocol right now. 65% burns on them, 3rd and 2nd degree. So they got a long time for recovery, and I know it's going to be hard for them and their family. So if you guys have time to send support, please do. And our hearts and minds are definitely with them and their families at this time, and I hope for a speedy recovery. That being said, we're bringing Peter Gaynor onto the show here, and he was officially confirmed by the U.S. Senate as FEMA Administrator on January 14th, 2020. He has 11 years of experience in emergency management, and before that, he was the director of Rhode Island's Emergency Management Agency in 2015. During the time, he was at the Rhode Island Emergency Management response to numerous small and large disasters. So he is a very well qualified and very well experienced emergency manager leading FEMA. And so, Administrator Gaynor, Pete, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on today. Appreciate it.
Good morning.
Morning, Dan. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm very, very grateful that you make the time to join us today.
My pleasure.
So we're gonna start off with the question that's kind of on everybody's mind right now, or emergency management individuals' mind is we see a lot of money spent on response and recovery. What's the plans FEMA has for directing some of that more attention towards the mitigation, the preparedness, and the prevention aspects of emergency management?
Yep, it's a great question and well timed. This past 1 October, we rolled out our new pre-disaster mitigation program called BRIC, Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities. Eligible applicants can apply right now for that money. And what makes it unique, first of all, it's a new program. It's not a rehash of the legacy PDM, pre-disaster mitigation, although it will have some elements from that program. But really is a new look at the way we do pre-disaster mitigation across the country. The other part of that is the amount of money we put into it this first year in our pilot year, $500 million, which is 10 times more than we've ever had in a mitigation program before at FEMA. And it's just not $500 million for the first year. Another unique element of BRIC is that it's funded by the 6% set aside from all ongoing disasters. So obviously this year we've had many disasters, wildfires, hurricanes, COVID. 6% of all those disaster costs go into the BRIC account, and we set that aside for not only this year's pre-disaster mitigation program, but for future years. So we want to have a well-funded, steady, consistent stream of funding that we dedicate for mitigation, because it really is the best investment we all can make to invest in disaster prevention, vice pay for post-disaster costs like we have been doing historically.
So one of the things that you mentioned in your response, which it's an amazing program. I've looked at it, and mitigation grants are amazing, but it's the eligibility part of it. How can we, or how can FEMA, I should say, make more people eligible and make this more, advertise it more? That's one of the biggest things that I've seen is that a lot of people don't know about it. They don't know about mitigation grants. They don't know, and BRIC is brand new, as you said. What are you guys doing to let people know this is what we have and this is how you can become eligible?
No, we've done a series of engagements, not just from October till today, but probably over the course of the spring and the summer. Obviously, I think a lot of attention was on all things other than mitigation that was going on. So wildfires, hurricanes, all the other things that have consumed our time. And there's a host of resources that are available to BRIC. And what I'd be happy to do is send you guys some links so you can share that out with your viewership. and spread it around, because there's some really great resources. And one of the resources is really a guide and samples of what kind of projects we're talking about. And it doesn't have to be the $100 million project, the big project that may take years to do. It could be a small project, a $100,000 project. We want to kind of share those ideas out, and we're encouraging partnership with this program. So you can have a private partner, you can have numerous partners, you can have multiple municipalities become partners on it. And so again, the first year, we want to try to be innovative and creative, and that really is the game. And we're trying to aim the mitigation dollars at lifelines, right? So to make sure that we point that money at things that count. And so I'd be happy to share that out with you guys, and there's a whole host of resources that your viewers can share.
So what can FEMA do to streamline that application process for local jurisdictions and states to be able to get that BRIC money to do mitigation?
Well, I think one of the things that we've been working on for a while now, years, is trying to consolidate all the different internet interfaces that we have for grant programs. It seems that every grant program, so whether it's a preparedness program, UASI, Homeland Security, fire grants, all have different entry points for grants. And so we have our new, along with BRIC, we have FEMA Go, which is the entry point for BRIC. We hope it's going to be simple, and that portal will be applicable to all the family of grants as we proceed. We've already done the Assistance to Firefighter grant is in FEMA Go, and so our goal is to consolidate all that complications down to one intuitive portal to apply, track, and close out your grant all in one easy to navigate interface.
Nice. That's really needed. I know in the past those grant applications and processes have been kind of confusing at some point.
It's confusing, and we're dedicated to make it less confusing.
Absolutely, and especially for the agencies who do not have a dedicated full-time emergency manager, it gets really kind of confusing for those guys to walk through that.
Absolutely.
Speaking of that, we have a question from the crowd here. So Andrew asked, would love if you could ask him, meaning you, the best advice for new emergency managers for both blue sky times and for new EMs that are starting during COVID. That's a pretty general question, but I guess the question is, for the new people getting into emergency management, that's one of the things that we do here as well with Dan's show, EM Student, is really trying to help the new emergency manager as well. Well, what advice do you have for them? Starting with basically they have to get on the ground running.
Yeah, especially if you're starting your career in 2020, you've been doing nothing but running, either towards the problem or away from the problem. I guess is your point of view. This is a complicated year to start your career in, and I'll just give the complexity here at FEMA. We are nearly 100% telework. All the things that we've been doing since March have been with the majority of our employees. We have some obviously around the nation in regions, and here at headquarters running the National Response Coordination Center, NRCC, all in person, plus our partners. And so it's a little bit more difficult if you're starting, right, to make connections with people, because obviously we're trying to stay away from each other. So it's been a difficult proposition this year. And for any new EM, there's plenty of problems to solve, right? And I would give some advice that I wish maybe I had gotten early in my career. And I started in a local government and then worked for the state. That is, we do response really well in this country, right? We do fire response, law enforcement, public works, because we do it every day, and everyone likes response because it's where the action is. And one of the things we don't do well is recovery, because it's complicated, it's long, it's hard to see immediate results like you do in recovery. No one likes mitigation, right? It's complicated, it's hard, There's lots of rules and regulations, but and having been in emergency management now for almost 13 years, we probably need to refocus on what is most important for communities, and that is mitigation, right? So we talked about BRIC a little bit, investment in mitigation before a disaster happens, and then investment in recovery, because that's what you're going to be graded on. Ultimately, you're going to be graded on, how well your community recovered. Did you use all the resources of the federal government to really make your community more resilient? So if there's one thing I could ask of new emergency managers and emergency managers that have been around for a while, you got to focus on recovery and you have to focus on mitigation, because that's where the greatest results lie.
Okay, this is a little different, more difficult question. So California just recently went through some stuff that was in the news where FEMA originally denied their grant application for some fires. I understand the reason why behind it, but can you explain that process of like when a state is asking for funds and what it is on your end, how it goes through when they approve or not approve the funding after a disaster?
Yep. Again, California, numerous fires still burning. Probably we've issued the most FMAGs, fire management assistance grants ever, not only to California but to other states like Oregon, Washington, Colorado for fire. So this has been a big fire year. I think what makes, and I'll pick on, you asked about California. So I think what makes California a little bit more difficult is, and I'll give you an example. We were out probably a month and a half ago, taking a tour with the state EM, Mark Araducci, and my regional administrator, Bob Fenton, in Napa County, where it had burned, and going out and look at some of the destruction. And then, we come home and a month later, it's burning again, right? So is it an old fire? Is it a new fire? How do you classify all that? How do you pick apart the new damage from the old damage? It can be complicated. And I must operate under the law of government. So the Stafford Act has rules and regulations. And as a emergency manager, both at the local and the state, now at the federal level, and I have a team of emergency managers here. I think we try to push the regulations and the law as much as we can do to the benefit of those impacted by disasters. But there are rules, and so you have to meet thresholds. You have to do damage assessments. You have to do all those kind of things to make sure. What we don't want to happen is that maybe you interpret the law a different way and you go too far, and the IG comes back or GAO comes back and says, hey, you need to take back money because you misinterpreted that regulation or that law. And no emergency manager, no governor, no mayor wants the federal government coming back and saying, hey, by the way, we overpaid you $20 million. 5 years or 10 years down the road. So we try to be diligent on all of those things, and sometimes it meets the threshold, and sometimes it doesn't. And the ultimate arbiter of all this is the president. He has discretion, the final say on all of it, and that's how it goes. But there's a process that the governor has to apply, and we have to review it, and we make our best recommendations on the data. But ultimately, the president has the final say.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I explain to my students when they ask that, about the process. And so it worked, right? The federal government is not giving money away, right? It's not that easy. There are rules and regulations, and we want to make sure the money goes for things that are important, and we want to make sure we give you the right amount of money so we don't have to take any of it back. And that really is, in my mind, the last thing I want is to come to see my mayor or my governor and say, by the way, we made a mistake, and now I owe, or governor, you owe, because you own the pocketbook. You had to come up with $10 million, and maybe a budget year where you don't have $10 million. So, right, that's how my mind works. Is we want to avoid that at all costs. Yeah, and it's happened in the past, right? I mean, I remember Los Angeles City had to pay a bunch of money back after the riots because they muffed some of the paperwork up and whatnot, and so absolutely.
Yeah.
I have a question on, because ultimately through everything is going on, and we see the importance of emergency management because we do it every day, right? And we're pushing, and we would really like to push more for you, the recovery aspect and the properly hitting mitigation. But we're still in all around. We are still in our infancy as a profession, emergency management in general, and it's hard to identify. We got to spend this much money up front for the hopes that in the back end we spend less, or we don't, that we can prevent it from happening altogether. What can we do, or what can FEMA do? What can the government do, I should say, to help others realize how important it is to have emergency management practitioners we got them at the state level. Most every state has it, but at the local level and the organizational level, to understand how important it is to have people pushing these initiatives and have people in this profession.
Yeah, and it's a great question, and it's a hard question. And so, my first job as emergency manager in the city of Providence I was a result of a disaster going wrong with the previous emergency manager and the previous leadership, and maybe at the time the mayor did not make the investments and maybe didn't pay attention to it. But I'll have to tell you, after you go through a disaster and after you take a public beating for a bad performance, that mayor that hired me became my best champion, because he had been through disaster and knew how important it is. And so it's hard for and again, working at the state, it's the same thing. Trying to convince a new leader or an administration that hasn't been through a disaster that they need to invest in emergency management all the time. I mean, it's an insurance policy, and one day maybe all that investment will pay off in a really tremendous response and recovery. And it's hard to convince sometimes a mayor or a governor that, hey, you need to make investment in this thing that may or may not happen. And that includes like mitigation, let alone just invest in an emergency management program. When that local elected leader, that mayor, has to choose between, I need more funding for education, I need more funding for social services, I need more funding for some other initiative that has, a perceived higher priority. It's hard to do that, but you have to tell a convincing story to your leadership and to the legislature about why it's important. And I would, and I tell all emergency managers, if you haven't had a disaster in your community, or you haven't managed a significant disaster, you need to look for an opportunity to go shadow, someone, whether it's in another state or another county, and shadow somebody on an active disaster, and more importantly, on an active recovery, because you can read about it, you can take ICS courses, all those kind of things, but until you feel it, you taste it, you smell it, and you see the pain and agony of a recovery, or pain and agony of a significant disaster response, it's going to be hard for you to tell that convincing story to your leadership. So if you're in that category, you need to get out there, learn that, and then tell that story to your elected leaders, tell that story to your legislature, and again, I wish I had a little more insight when I first started out. Maybe I was focused on response, right? Because that's what has to happen. Open up the EOC, do all those kind of things that have to happen. But if I had to do it all over again, I'd focus more on mitigation. I'd focus more on insurance, and I focus more on legislative change about emergency management. Your governor or mayor can do a executive order which will last through the life of that governor's time in office, right? 4 years. But as soon as that governor leaves or that mayor leaves, and that executive order disappears. And so all the great things that you had done in those 4 years kind of goes away. So the only way to have a good emergency management program for the long haul is to get legislation, right? You have to legislate some of these things in law so it has endurance over time. So make those investments, even if you're a brand new emergency manager or a well-seasoned emergency manager. Make those investments, because that's what really pays off.
So I want to ask a question based on that as well. With emergency management and it being a new field, you have a mixed bag of people who go to school, do emergency management as a profession, and then you have those that are collateral duty and really don't know what they're doing when they get put in there. What can we do as an industry, as a business, or not a business, but as a function?
It is a business,
right?
Think about it that way. Yep.
Okay, what can we do to get people that are trained and qualified to sit in the position of emergency management I mean, I always think along the lines of, say, post-certification for police officers or the basic fire academy for firefighters. Is there something that we can do for emergency managers?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a lot, and I think Dan said it. We are a young, in some cases, immature profession. I think this year we have grown a lot this year because I think across the nation, local and state elected leaders, tribal chiefs, territorial governors have seen the importance of what emergency management can do for your community, especially in a pandemic. You have to, I think the problem with this profession is that it's narrow, right? It's not like becoming a police officer or a firefighter where there's plenty of bandwidth, plenty of ways to enter that and get some experience as a firefighter or a police officer. Emergency management, in some cases, and I'll use in the state I came from, I was only one of two full-time paid emergency managers in the state. Everyone else was either collateral duty or volunteer, and one, right? And so getting into the profession is hard. Not impossible, but it's hard. But you have to be focused, and you have to have some drive and enthusiasm to do it. And we probably need, as a profession, to grow like other professions. Do we need a emergency management academy or professional emergency management training? And I'm not talking about ICS training or any of that, but fully immersed academy kinds of programs at the state and national level to make not just hope you hire a good emergency manager, but actually grow emergency managers in the profession, get them qualified, get them certified, get them experience. But we have to build that system a little bit more deliberately, and it's one of the things that we've been a little sidetracked this year. But it's one of the things that has been on my list to do, is to try to become more professional. We're talking about today. I hired Jeff Stern, who's the former state director in Virginia, to be the superintendent of EMI, Emergency Management Institute. And we're talking now about how do we become a FEMA university, right? How do we have that no-kidding professional campus and professional academics that we turn out these kind of skill sets? So we have some way to go. I think we know there's a shortfall, and we need to work together to get to that, whatever that solution is.
Absolutely. And I think EMI is one of those places that is a good starting point. Dan and I both are graduates of the Executive Academy, and I think the program over there is outstanding in what EMI does. And I think more support for EMI and as emergency managers, take advantage of it, right? Go and sign up for those courses. I mean, they're there. They're outstanding instructors. They're really well put together, and the experience of being at EMI is second to none. That's just my little pitch for EMI.
Oh yeah, EMI is definitely a push.
The academics of it is important, but there also needs to be an element of, in the building of an emergency manager, we send you out and to shadow and learn from an emergency manager who's been around and who has an active disaster. There's no training, there's no education that can supplant that kind of hands-on stuff. So we have to think about the practical application part of what we do. I'm not sure we do enough of that.
Yeah, doing internships, having mentors, areas where you can get trained is huge. But I think ultimately the way is and I would like to see this more, is we're really short-sighted in a lot of things we're doing, and I'm seeing positions popping up left and right. As you said, we grew a lot this year, and it's kind of like a growth spurt, right, with emergency management. But we're seeing a lot of people, and it's still short-sighted. They're putting these positions in place, and they're only going to be there until the money runs out, and it's mainly based on CARES money, right? So they put this money in place, and they put this position because we're going to need it right now. But it's so short-sighted that we need to be looking further down the road. We need to be, how do we build this better? And
I think
EMI is a good place.
Yeah, as a national platform, right? And again, we are, we do a lot of great things, but in some cases we're immature in some of these things. And so, what is the emergency management national platform, right? What are we trying to champion as a profession this year? What is the thing that we want? We really don't have it, right? And I'm talking not just from FEMA, but all of us together. We need to have if we want to make change, it needs to be change that is driven from tribes and territories and states and counties and everyone in between, municipalities, to drive a national dialogue on what's important to the profession. And maybe that is, hey, you need to, if you don't have a emergency management program, you need to have one, and you need to fund it. I mean, that's a dialogue we should have in every state with legislators, and it can be done, right? We did it with EMAC years ago. Every state eventually signed up to EMAC, and now we have a national system. But we need to have a national platform driven by professionals and associations like NEMA and NACO and IEM that drive a consolidated national agenda for emergency management. Because if we don't, you can't, you have so much to do anyway, right? So it's hard even on a good day with nothing to do. But if we don't have some sort of energy behind that, enthusiasm behind it, and kind of take all that goodness and leverage it in the pointy end of it, right, where the laser focus needs to be, we won't change it. So we need to work hard at that.
Yeah, I agree. And it needs to come down to the individual too. You have the individual that's doing the job that needs to push that and be the change agent, but you need that at the national level, that initiative that has the support that gives them what they need to fight the battles that they are going to have to fight to establish their importance, establish their position, establish the profession in general. And it does go down to the individual, but we need that backing. We need that someone that gives us that support that we're gonna help you along the way. And I think that's one of the things that we're lacking the most is we have the individuals in their positions in some places, but they're third, fourth, fifth removed, and they have no voice.
Well,
how do we give them the voice? If
there's a year to champion what emergency management has done for your community, right? All the things that we've done, this is the year. So I'm all about working together to get that national dialogue about what's important to emergency managers, from top to bottom.
There's a couple of questions that are coming in the chat regarding the FEMA Reserve Program and what's the purpose behind it, and can you use the FEMA Reserve Program as a way to train future emergency managers? Pretty interesting.
Yeah. So there's 20,000 employees in FEMA, and the majority of those, about 13,000 or so, are reservists. And it just, it kind of equates to what a reservist is in the military. We call them up when we need them. Although, it's not exactly the same when you think about what rights a reservist has in DOD, Vice, FEMA. We're working on to change some of that. But really is our disaster workforce. And unique this year, because we are doing mostly telework, most of our workforce, most of our disaster workforce, reservists, are working from home. And it's amazing some of the things that we've accomplished from home, especially in disasters. There's a requirement to have, hands-on, face-to-face kind of thing, but we're trying to minimize all that contact to keep our workforce safe. Because if I have a workforce that's has high positivity from COVID, I can't deliver the mission, and I don't want to get disaster survivors a second disaster by getting them infected with COVID. So it's a balance there, but it's a great. I mean, if you're not sure if emergency management is for you and you want to get a taste of it, being a reservist is really a great way to enter, get some experience in something that is of interest to you. And again, I'd be happy to help you guys get connected to how you can enter that pipeline. I'll get you some information about how you do that.
That's great. Thank you. I want to kind of talk a little bit, the kind of concept of reservists, right? With COVID and the fact that the ZOCs are being just run in the ground in some cases. And then we have, of course, the regular disasters, whatever that means, right? The fires and the hurricanes and whatnot coming through. We're seeing a lot more local jurisdictions, not just state size jurisdictions, but locals hiring contractors and also using unique programs, the volunteer programs such as like Team Rubicon to come in and fill roles in the Emergency Operations Center. Do you see more and more contractors or nonprofits being used in EM nowadays, since just with the op tempo that's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if it's more. I mean, there's I mean, we've been growing as a organism, right? So it's just not FEMA, and it's just not the state, and it's just not the locals. It's all those other things that are connected to it: NGOs, private sector, and especially this year with COVID-19. I have met more new, and I'll just speak from the federal point of view. I have met more new partners at the federal level that I had no connection with before. So whether it's FDA, like why would FEMA have a relationship with FDA? But I do now. I'm not sure it's changed that dramatically. I think if we're thinking about contractors, I think we use the majority of contractor support for some technical disaster recovery. Public assistance grants need a lot of disaster contract support, especially for those communities that haven't had a disaster, right? It's kind of all a foreign language. And one way to get that kind of support is through contractor support. And there's some great contractors out there that do it. So, I mean, I haven't really seen any big change in it, but it is an all hands on deck kind of year this year.
All right, Pete, I'm going to ask the next question. This is when we'll wrap up after this. Where do you see emergency management heading in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I'm just going to speak from the FEMA point of view. We FEMA, and this is just my prediction. I haven't spoken to anyone outside my office, but my opinion is that based on what we've done this year, FEMA will be asked to do much more. Typically, we only do natural disasters, so all the things that you typically see, flooding and hurricanes and wildfires. I mean, that's kind of our bread and butter, the things that we do well at. Interagency coordination, we do really well at that. Solving problems, we do really well at that. And we've upscaled all of that because on the 13th of March, the world all changed, especially for emergency managers, where the president signed a national disaster, and on one day, every state, territory, and the District of Columbia became a major disaster. Never happened in the history of FEMA. And continually, because, and I think this is the DNA of emergency managers, is we solve problems. And we may not have all the answers up front. We may not have a clear path. We know intuitively what needs to be done, and we have been doing that. We have been doing it at the local level to the federal level with FEMA and my partners. So I think it's gonna change, where FEMA has responsibilities much greater than national disasters, and you can use the pandemic COVID-19 response as a example of how the nation called on us to do that. And again, to the credit of emergency managers across the country, we have solved. And I'm not saying COVID is over by no means. We still have a ways to go, but we have solved some major problems. And again, we've been asked to do things that we haven't done before. The president asked us to do lost wages, nationally. We have a authority under the Stafford Act to do disaster unemployment assistance, but that's kind of a narrow, impacted by a hurricane kind of thing, like narrow in scope and geography. In 5 days, we came up with a brand new program, and in 7 days we had the first $3 billion on the street. And today we nearly have all the money on the street, $44 billion in lost wages. That's a Department of Labor thing, right? It's not a FEMA thing, but we did it because the times demand it, and the situation demands it, and that's so. The bottom line is we all will be asked to do much more than we have in the past, because we've demonstrated that we can solve and act on really thorny problems quickly.
Well, Pete, I know you have to get running, and thank you so much for your time today. And I'd like to do this again sometime.
Sure, anytime. Just schedule it.
All right, sounds great.
All right,
thank you very much.
I appreciate the time, Todd and Dan. Appreciate it. Be safe.
Thank you.
Awesome. Hey, everybody! Thank you again for listening to us, and also I want to thank our sponsors for taking the time for us today. We have Titan HST for mass notification needs and more COVID track tracing, and also for just situational awareness going on. Also, I would like to say thank you to the Outer Limit Supply Company for their support as well. And again, if you use EM Weekly, all capitals, you can get a 20% discount on their products there. And they're really high-end stuff. And I think that you're going to really enjoy it. It's not, when you get a kit from them, it's not just a bunch of Band-Aids. It's a really well put together. And I'm telling you, as a medic, a former Navy corpsman, when I took a look at their kits, and I knew that they're the real deal. And it's also put together by a current working firefighter medic out of Colorado. And so he knows his stuff as well. And also don't forget about VanQuest bags. My favorite bag now that I carry is the VanQuest bag Dan's laughing because Dan wants his own VanQuest bag. Has the orange liner on the inside of it. It's awesome because I'm always losing my stuff, and my other bags are dark on the inside. Oh, look at this. The VanQuest bag is right here. I'm telling you, look, I feel like I'm doing an infomercial and more. See, that's orange inside there. I open this up. I can see everything that's inside there. I don't lose my keys or everything else I throw in there. And it's just one of those things that help me out. 100% professional bag right there. Again, 20% discount with EM Weekly, all capitals. So I want to thank the sponsors for having us here. Dan, what do you got to say? What do you think of the interview with Pete?
I think it was great. It was amazing that he could share his time with us today. A lot of good information came from it, and it sounds like we have going to have a lot of support coming from the top tier of emergency management profession.
Absolutely. Hey, we had a lot of comments, and I'm sorry we couldn't get to them all and whatnot going through this. But I'd like to run through a couple of them. And I know Eric Alberts, he's talking about the idea of going to EMI, which is really hard to get to due to time constraints and stuff like this. And that's like everything else, right? When we're looking at doing training, we have to set time aside to do training. And it might be easier said than done. So, Eric, I agree with you. And having quality online education programs through EMI, I know for sure. I've been talking to those guys over there, and they were talking about putting these on better than the stuff they have right now. They want to do some more synchronous courses as well through their online platform. And then I want to cover one more right here, and it says that Conrad says that he would love to see FEMA, state and local municipalities and EMs develop a community program fundamentally different from CERT that helps families and neighborhoods work together to prepare for disasters. And I think you're absolutely right, Conrad. We need to do a better job of creating that resilient community. And if you've seen my other stuff I've done in the past, resiliency, and now I'm really getting into the concept of anti-fragility for our communities, because when we have a community that can be anti-fragile or resilient, right, when it comes to response and doing the disaster portion of it, it's going to make it easier. And then when it comes to recovery, obviously it's going to make it even better when you have that resilient community that's able to come back, bounce back from disasters. So Dan, final words before we go.
Well, as an individual emergency manager, as a professional, we need to make the effort. We need to be the champion. It's going to be great to have that support, but be the champion for your organization, for your jurisdiction. And it is hard, especially when you're the only person doing it, to get away or to make time for professional development. But it is absolutely worth it in the end. Let's do our part to be the best emergency manager we can be, and to build the next generation of emergency managers. Thank you very much.
All right, everybody. Again, thank you so much for being with us today here at EM Weekly. Dan, thank you for your time. Pete, thank you for your time as well. And don't forget, you can follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, on your favorite podcast player. Everybody out there, stay safe, stay hydrated.
It is.